that regard. But now the difficult part of the case is beginning. Because now you've got to bring to bear your analytical skills in trying to determine what the facts are here, because you're the sole judges of the facts, and compare the facts and determine whether or not the legal instructions you receive can somehow correspond with those facts in a way in which you can reach a verdict. And that's a hard thing to do. This is a human process, of course. We don't have machines that can make these kinds of decisions or devices, but that's good, because humans are the best judges of other humans. And that's why we have this system. That's why you're here. Now, that can cut the other way, of course. You heard testimony that was relatively emotional, shocking in some respects. You heard of individuals who tended to loved ones who were grievously injured in this case. And that can be upsetting, it can be emotional, it can inspire sympathy. Of course, that is something that you can't consider here. And that's why you're on this jury. We did our best, I think both the prosecutors and me, to choose a jury that can be dispassionate, analytical, think critically, without emotion. And in fact, Judge Attulio will tell you, you can't use emotions, you can't use sympathy to analyze the evidence here. So your cool heads will prevail, and I'm sure that you will reason through this and deliberate competently and arrive at a just verdict. Now, I told you in my opening statement that this case relies almost exclusively on eyewitnesses, and that didn't change in the course of this trial. It's clear that the eyewitness testimony in this case is critical. What I'd like to speak with you about this morning, however, is what is believable there. What can you trust in the eyewitness testimony? And there are lots of reasons I'm going to suggest to you that you can't trust much or most of the eyewitness testimony. And I'll tell you why. Anquinette Burks testified early in this case, and she was interviewed hours after the crime occurred. Anquinette Burks, you'll recall, was the woman who came up, I think, from Memphis, and she was with Danielle Mackin and his wife. However, regardless of what Anquinette Burks said, what she observed, which was really quite little, she was hiding behind the ticket booth while she said the shooting occurred. She was the one, of course, who identified Keith Johnson as the shooter in this case. And nothing can erase that. And one of the things I want you to see when you're able to look at the exhibits in private, when you deliberate, and you're able to get those items in evidence and take a close look at them. One thing I'd like you to take a look at is Exhibit B in evidence. Exhibit B in evidence is an affidavit which is attached to a photo array in which Anquinette Burks made a choice, and she selected Keith Johnson as the shooter. Now, this occurred hours, literally hours after the crime occurred. And what can't be excused by the fact that the district attorney and the homicide squad recognized the error of her selection. Within a day or two after Keith Johnson was arrested, and Keith Johnson was released and the charges were dismissed, and that was done by the district attorney of this county himself, went to court to dismiss those charges. And then the investigation refocused. But the value of Anquinette Burks as a witness for the prosecution is completely destroyed. Why? Well, if you look at Exhibit B in evidence, and this is why I moved it into evidence, you're going to see this affidavit on the first page of the exhibit in which she says she picked out a photo in the number 2 slot, and you'll see that she circled it and she was told that that individual was Keith Johnson. And you heard her in her testimony say, well, I saw the profile of this person. I wasn't 100% sure. That's what she said from the witness stand here. But the reliable proof, the affidavit that she signed the same day as the shootings, in her own handwriting, she says, I positively, not possibly, positively identify the person in the photograph as being one that I saw shooting. That's in her own handwriting. That was her testimony at trial. How do you weigh that? Well, my suggestion is that you say, well, despite her qualifications, despite the fact that she knows she made a mistake, despite the fact that she was told that and asked to testify also about that, because essentially I think the prosecutor wanted some testimony about what happened to Danielle Mackin. She didn't see him get shot. She saw him get up and wobble toward her, and then she was able to say, well, he died in my arms, as I tried to administer CPR to him. But the real value, I'm going to suggest to you, of Antoinette Burks, is that she made the wrong identification, and she was positive about that wrong identification. Remember, she said the shooter had a purple shirt on and blue or dark blue shorts. Well, that didn't jive with any of the other evidence in the case, according to the prosecutors. So you can't trust Antoinette Burks. James Robbs. You can't trust James Robbs either. Now, James Robbs, of course, was brought here in shackles and said he didn't want to be here, and I don't know why, but, and he got a little in my face because he said, well, you don't understand. You live in your world and I live in mine. Well, what does that have to do with anything? What is that defiance all about? You live in your world, I live in mine. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in a United States courtroom here in Erie County, we all live in the same world because we're supposed to all play by the same rules, where we testify under oath, swear to tell the truth, regardless of what world you come from, because we are all subject to the same laws. And those laws say, if you've got testimony to give, you've got to give it under oath. There's no double standard here. I don't know about you, I heard some snickers from the audience when he said that. You live in your world, I live in mine. What does that mean? Well, James Robbs gave his first statement at ECMC. Remember, he said that he thought he was shot. He went and he held Willie McCaw until the police came. And then he went home, tried to urinate, was in pain, and had himself driven to ECMC. Now, at ECMC, he gave his first statement. In his medical records, he acknowledged in his testimony that he said, I don't know who shot me. He said, I was shot with a revolver. Well, then the homicide detectives interview him on August 18th. He said he'd been drinking. He didn't see who shot him. August 24th, homicide detectives go back and speak with James Robbs a second time. Now they get a little bit more out of him. On August 24th, he identifies my client as the shooter, looks at video, looks at still photographs, writes on those still photographs, says he's the shooter, I'm the guy with the champagne bottle, I fall down because I'm drunk, I break the bottle, and then I get chased by McCrae. He also says, I saw McCrae with a gun, I know McCrae, but he didn't see him shoot him. He didn't see McCrae shoot him, James Robbs. What do you make of a gentleman, James Robbs, who identifies my client as a shooter, identifies in his second statement a gun as being a nickel-plated Luger, when at the hospital he says he got shot with a revolver? Those are two very different types of handgun. But then can't recall the details of when James Robbs had a gun and James Robbs was having a duel or something on a Buffalo City street 10 years ago, and you heard him, said, I don't remember the details of that. You remember, because ultimately James Robbs was compelled by me to recall that he actually fired shots, one of which hit a Buffalo City bus aide in the ankle. And he did time for that. This bus aide's helping kids off a bus, and she gets shot by James Robbs, but he can't remember that. You cannot trust James Robbs. Can't trust what he says. He's brought here in shackles. For whatever reason, he doesn't want to testify. We don't know what that is. Maybe it's cultural. I don't know. I can't even speculate. You know, because you saw it. You make your own conclusion there. But James Robbs can't be trusted. Lies to the police, not once but twice. And there you go. You can't trust James Robbs. What about McHale King? She's the woman who was a convicted thief. In December of 2009, she's indicted in U.S. District Court, just around the square here, for conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute more than 5 kilograms of cocaine. She's involved in this conspiracy with a number of people. And she claims to have been at the City Grill on August 13th and into the 14th. And her importance to the prosecution is that she's the one who picks my client's picture out of a photo array and sits in this courtroom and says, Mr. McRae's the guy with the gun. I saw him with the gun. And she doesn't see him shoot it or anything like that because she's on the floor, I think, and ends up in the basement of the City Grill at some point. But what's important about her and why you can't trust McHale King is that she's another eyewitness in this case who is trying to get something for herself when she's got the leverage to do it. What was her leverage? Well, did she go to the homicide squad and willingly give a sworn statement? No. No, she went straight to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Those are the people who are prosecuting her for this cocaine conspiracy, for which she acknowledged she could, upon conviction, do a number of years in a federal penitentiary. She goes straight over there, and on August 20th, she sits down with her attorney and the federal prosecutors and FBI agents and Buffalo homicide detectives, and gives a statement and says, well, it was Mr. McRae. Now, she's cooperating on her own terms. You can't trust that. Is that your experience in life, ladies and gentlemen? That, well, I'll talk, but I'm going to tell you what you got to do for me first. Now, granted, she said, well, there have been no promises made or anything like that. Well, so what? No promises have been made. She did what she did. She came through, testified for the prosecution. You don't think for a minute that when it comes time for McHale King to get a plea or get sentenced in federal court, that that's not going to be brought up? She cooperated in a major homicide investigation and testified in a major homicide investigation, and she was helpful because she identified McRae as the individual holding a gun at the time these shootings occurred? You know the answer to that question. You can't trust that. She calculated her testimony and her assistance with the people prosecuting her and her own attorney so that she could benefit. She's not doing anybody any favors but herself. You can't trust that. You know that from your life experience. And this case is one finagler after another who's trying, these people are trying to gain some benefit for themselves. You know in everyday life you can't trust that, and you shouldn't trust that in this case. Well, the next one's Rakita Latham.